Okay, so this video is going to be a high-level introduction to Clay. This is going to be what I usually tell people when they ask me, so what does Clay actually do? Because I've spoken to probably hundreds of people at this point over the last 2 years working at Sculpted, running Sculpted, that are always asking me, what does Clay do? Some people, fine, they know what it is already, and you've probably heard of it, you've probably seen it, but you still have a question. What does it do? The website is really pretty, it's really nice, but it's hard to really understand what it does, and I found there's a huge disconnect between people like looking at the site and then after I explain to them and show them what Clay can do, they're like, oh, that's what it does. So I'm going to give a high level value proposition around what Clay can do and the problem that it solves from the data enrichment perspective for the CRM. So historically, before Clay, people would go to legacy providers like ZoomInfo, Apollo, Lusha. There's tons of these household names if you're in the SaaS space, tons of these household data enrichment provider names. And these companies essentially, they mine data from all over the web, they buy data, et cetera, and they mark it up at a huge rate. And then they brand themselves really cool with like a really nice website and they sell it to you. And they have crazy pricing. They lock you into large contracts. Usually you have to buy multiple of these giant enterprise contracts in order to have enough coverage for your market, because maybe one provider is really good in Europe, one's really good in America, maybe one's good for a certain industry versus another. And it's very difficult to find one provider that does it all, right? And so you end up spending tons of money without getting really a return in terms of coverage. So your cost per record is very high, and you also have very, very low coverage. Another problem with these providers is that they're very generic, and the data is not really fitting for your custom definition, because these are big box data providers that have millions of records in their system, and they have to try and create, for example, industry filters that apply to everyone. But you have a very custom definition of how you think about your target market. So for example, you may have custom categories. If you're selling to e-commerce brands, you might have custom categories for different apparel categories like luxury, streetwear, activewear, basics. That level of granularity and custom, being very opinionated about your market is how you can properly segment and meet them where they are and use the right messaging and the right advertising and emails. But no ZoomInfo or Lusha is going to actually have filters that meet your definition. If you go to LinkedIn Sales Navigator or ZoomInfo, every single person in sales and marketing I go to, I've spoken to about this, they tell me if you put in a filter for your target market, like an industry filter, in any of these tools, they get a mix of stuff that's not actually accurate. And it's very hard to actually apply your own custom business logic, which essentially makes the data useless, because it tries to segment things properly, but it doesn't. So, you can't really go into your CRM and pull a list of a specific segment you want to go after because you don't have the right data. I just spoke to someone yesterday, the head of go-to-market at I think a 400 employee company. They have over 250,000 records in HubSpot. And he's like, I can't even get accurate headcount information out of ZoomInfo and other tools. So this is the legacy problem that's been going on for the last 10, 15 years. As a rep, I never really trusted any of these tools because I always felt like I had to spend either tons of manual time going through the records myself to verify that they were accurate, or I would just pull a giant list. I would say, screw it, I don't have time. And I would try and email everybody, and a lot of emails would bounce, and it wouldn't be the right ICP because of the bad filtering. So what did Clay do that's different? Clay is not another data provider. Clay is a data marketplace. Clay raised money, and they went to every single data provider that they had in their system, which is at this point over 100, and they bought all the data in bulk up front, which then means they can leverage economies of scale, meaning wholesale. They can sell the data back to you as an individual for a cheaper price because they bought it all up front. They get a discount, and so they can give you the data for cheaper than you would if you were to go right to the vendor yourself in most cases, even with their markup, which is pretty cool. And it also means that you can only access data that you need. So instead of going to buy a giant contract with ZoomInfo, you just pay Clay monthly for the amount of credits that you need, and you only spend when you get a result that you're looking for. So if you're trying to go for tech stack, you can call on 3 different tech stack providers and only pay when you find the tech data that you're looking for. A really common example is emails. Instead of paying for 100.io to try and find an email address, you can use 10 different email data providers, pass in one LinkedIn profile in Clay, and you're only going to pay when you find a result. So that maximizes your coverage and minimizes the cost, and allows you to, like I said, just sort of break the rules that we've had to follow for the last 10-ish years. And it really allows you to be flexible and maximize coverage in different geos, different markets, right? Without having to commit to a giant contract that's very rigid and you're stuck in until the next year. But on top of that, what I think makes Clay even more powerful is the AI component. So instead of just having to rely on rigid data, in these generic vendors, you can use AI to write custom rules, custom definitions, and actually transform the data according to what you're looking for. For example, let's say a company has a set of specific company categories that they use. This is an example of some company categories that are custom from one of our customers. And they gave me an example company in each category. These are high-level categories. You can get even more specific. But these are categories that they use, and they want their companies in their HubSpot CRM to be mapped to these company categories. So what I did is I used each one of these categories, and I used ChatGPT to create a short description of each one of these categories. And I told this AI prompt in Clay, your job is to take a company description with 90% confidence take the company description and bucket into one of these categories with at least 90% confidence, or choose other. And I pass in a company description from a previous step in Clay, which is ClayGen. ClayGen allows you to use AI to scrape the web and look for information. So in this case, I use ClayGen to just take the company website that I have and summarize what they do. So for Marlboro cigarettes, I created this prompt right here, this output response from my ClayGen prompt, which summarizes what Marlboro does. And then it passed it into this AI prompt here, and it chose tobacco and tobacco alternatives as the industry. And you can get very granular with this. You can do industry, sub-industries. This allows you to change the rule book, right? This would have historically required a person to go through and actually manually check each company and use their brain to read the website, think about the industry, and then choose one of the industries, right? Taking qualitative, unstructured data and turning it into deterministic, true, false, like data, historically was not possible without a person using their brain. But now with AI, you can take unstructured data sets and qualitative information like text and turn it into ones and zeros, like tobacco and tobacco alternatives as an industry category, for example, which makes it way easier to clean up your database. It's as if you have a person going through your HubSpot and manually reviewing each record and making sure it's accurate, right? But it's doing it much faster and much cheaper and much more accurately than a person could, right? So that's, I think, the combination of 100 plus data providers that are native to Clay, the ability to integrate into any other provider you want via API that's not native to Clay, and the AI integrations really allows you to be super flexible with your data and allows you to, like I said, clean up your HubSpot as if it was done by a human being for each record, which is insanely powerful. And that's what we're doing at Sculpted. We're helping our customers leverage Clay to clean their HubSpot database. I'm going to get more into that in future videos, but that's my high-level take on Clay, why it's different, why it shook things up, and why people are loving it. It's the first data vendor. It's not even really a vendor, but it's the first way to acquire data that actually works for any company use case. And that's why they became, valued at over $1 billion within a year or two. When I met them like a year and a half, 2 years ago in their office, they were doing like $500,000 in revenue, a little bit more than that. And then now they're doing tens and tens of millions, huge valuations back to back because of how powerful they are for any go-to-market motion. Clay can slot into your definition of what you need and make it happen. That's my high level, like I said, take on Clay and why I think you're unique and different. And now I'm going to spend the rest of the series going through talking about some of the core features of Clay inside the product, just what you really need to know. And then we'll get down here into the HubSpot enrichment component.